Rest in peace, Myra Craft. Patriots! This one's for you.
Welcome to Patriots Central Radio with Jeremy Dawson and Steve Balestreri.
And welcome to Patriots Central Radio. We have a fantastic show for you guys tonight. We have a couple of really special guests. We're going to be talking about the Panthers game, the obvious controversial call at the end. We're going to be breaking down some of the Broncos game that's upcoming on Sunday night. We have some special guests with Shalise Manza Young from the Boston Globe. And right now we're going to talk with Mike Dussault. As most of you know him as Pat's Propaganda on Twitter. Mike is a great guy. He writes for the Bleacher Report. He also does a great podcast with Eric French from the Boston Globe. Mike, welcome to Patriots Central Radio. We're glad you could make it with us.
Hey, guys. Really psyched to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Hey, let's just jump right into this. What was your impressions of this Carolina game? We know it was a great football game. Unfortunately, the way it ended, it left a kind of a sour taste in people's mouths. But, give us your thoughts and your impressions on the game overall.
Sure. I mean, I think I'll start with the positive, I guess, which I thought on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, I think you're really starting to see the offense click at a level that, we have everybody back and healthy now, and that's a good thing. And I think you're starting to see the potential is there. They've got a lot of different targets, and I think it's almost like a flashback to, back in the early 2000s where, Brady's favorite receiver was the open one. That was at least the saying, and since we had Welker in 2007, I mean, I think the offense, kind of became somewhat predictable. Granted, it was still unstoppable, but I think we saw elements against the Panthers where it was, really spreading the ball around. You saw each different receiver come through with some big catches. You saw Shane Vereen really getting incorporated. So, if I had to take the positive, and I know there's not a lot of people talking about the positives coming out, I would have to say that, obviously in terms of the call at the end, I think if one thing we learned in 2007, it's kind of to look at the big picture, and that losses can be a good thing. And granted, it was a blown call. The Patriots probably should have had another shot at it, but I look at the big picture and say, all right, well, maybe this is the kind of thing that can kind of galvanize this team, especially against a tough matchup. The biggest thing that stuck out to me was just third downs. I mean, they couldn't get off the field, and you look at how many possessions Brady had. I think it was seven possessions, 7 drives the entire game. If they just gotten off the field once or twice more, I think you're looking at a 10-point Patriot win. So an unfortunate end, but I think that it's not. They're pretty close, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, the one thing that stuck out for me, Mike, was they had, like you said, they had 7 possessions, and their smallest number of plays on any possession on Monday night was 8 plays, and that was actually a drive they scored a touchdown on, and that was against the number 1 defense in the NFL, and that is something I think that you can look at and say this offense is starting to get its ducks in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Shane Vereen really showed. I mean, I think all of us, the right and follow the team, everybody was kind of trying to temper their expectations, but you could tell everybody thought that he was really going to be just such an X factor, especially receiving the ball downfield. He's so talented and so quick, and just it's been such an element that they've been missing. And a lot of people are like, oh, they're gonna ease him in, and I kept thinking to myself, like, man, Brandon Bolden's not dressing. They got 1 receiving back. I said, this seems like a game where they're going to spread him out and try to throw a lot, and he had a great performance. I mean, he came right out of the gate. And I mean, you can only expect he's going to get better as he gets back into the flow of things.
Absolutely. And that was, like you said, they expected to ease him in. He played 34 snaps. It seemed like he was on the field for a lot longer than that.
Yeah, he just has such a skill set that, no one else really has. And I mean, I think probably rightly so. It's a little bit questionable letting Danny Woodhead go. I mean, I think he was really reliable, and we've seen him do a bunch of things. And when Vereen went down in week 1, you knew they really didn't have that receiving back to back him up. And I'm a Brandon Bolden fan, but he just doesn't have the kind of receiving skills that Vereen clearly does. And we saw them try to throw his patented little wheel route that they do where Brady kind of throws a fade. We saw it last year against the Texans where it's just pinpoint accuracy, and it hit Vereen right off the hands. But coming back from injury, I think we got to give him a pass on that one. At least coming right back in the first game.
Hey, Mike. So just to go to that play that everybody has talked about way too much anyway, we're going to talk about it now. I was just wondering, what? Because one aspect to it that I feel like everybody who does have an opinion about it hasn't really completely understood one way or the other. I was wondering, do you think that it was defensive holding or defensive pass interference? If you think that there was a penalty at all, of course. But which
I mean,
side?
to be totally honest, I mean, look, was there anyone out there who didn't think that they were going to throw a seam route to Gronk on that play? I mean, I saw it coming a mile away. I mean, it was like, well, that's pretty obvious. I mean, we saw it in 2009 with Ben Watson, where they had, two seam routes to come back against the Bills in the opener. But look, and to be completely honest, and I was live blogging the game for Bleacher Report. If the flag was thrown, they picked it up. I turned the TV off. I didn't really even spend that much time on it because I just figured, all right, well, if they're not going to call it, they're going to pick it up. It's game over.
Right.
I mean, I guess it's got to be a pass interference call. I mean, he's hugging him. Clearly, the ball, is in the air. But there's so much time spent going. What was it? What was the call? What would have happened? I mean, I know some people have pointed out as well that the Patriots are one of the worst teams in the league on the goal line, in short yardage situations. So I thought the more interesting question that I saw on PatsFans.com that they were kind of debating was, all right, well, if they had gotten a call, what's your play call on? You get one play on the 1 yard line. What do you do? I thought that was the interesting thing to debate. But like I said, at the end of the day, bad call. Went against the Pats. It's the third time in the last 2 years where they've had a controversial call right at the end of the game go against them. And now, as we kind of move past it, I just look at it as, when we saw Belichick, as Mike Reese reported, showed in the film study as they went back to the Detroit-Cleveland game that same thing happened. The penalty was called. Detroit scored and won. And, Belichick shows that in the film study this week. So I think that they're going to have to use that and say, it's kind of us against the world. And we saw what happens when a team kind of all gets in line with that line of thinking in 2007. Granted, they ran out of steam right at the end, but I think that it can be turned into a positive. It's an unfortunate thing, but, blown call, they happen. We just got to move on.
Right, and as you say, the whole us against the world thing, I mean, in '07, I hate to say it, but, I mean, even as the Giants walked into that game in the Super Bowl, that was kind of their mentality. So, I mean, it kind of did follow through all the way to the end. Just at the end, it went against us. But just to stay on this year, so if New England loses this week against the Broncos, I mean, I don't want to assume that they do, but let's just say if, and Miami and New York win this week, that puts them both only a game behind the Patriots. Do you see somebody sneaking up on the Patriots in the AFC East this year?
Not really. I mean, I don't want to sound overly confident, and I think that there's definitely you'd be stupid not to think that there's a very good chance they lose this game this week, especially given how banged up they are in the secondary. But I think that the realistic view right now is that they're probably going to end up the third or fourth seed. I mean, I think after this game, you could easily see them winning out. I mean, you've got at the Texans, the Browns, the Dolphins, the Ravens, who might be struggling for a spot, in Baltimore. That's going to be a great game for sure. And then the Bills. So, I think the Patriots can win out. I think the Football Outsiders still has them as like a 93% lock to win the AFC East. I mean, the Jets are so inconsistent. I mean, I like what they did against us, but they look great one week and then they lose to the Bills the next week. So you just never know who you're going to get with those guys. I've always said with Miami this year, they just got to hang on and then try to, win out at the end. So they could sneak in. It wouldn't surprise me. But I think the Patriots, even if they lose this week, probably still in the driver's seat. But I think ultimately they're probably going to end up a 3 or 4 seed, and they're going to have to win. They're going to have to win at least one game on the road, maybe 2.
Definitely, I agree. I just was wondering, wanted to hear a different take. So thank you.
Oh, sure.
All right, Mike. Let's talk about the Broncos game. How do you see the Patriots trying to slow down this offense?
Oh God, well, it's a great question, Steve. I mean, you go crazy trying to figure out who can match up where, and and I think for me, it just kind of comes back to, as I've been kind of writing about a little bit this week, it comes down to disguise. I mean, you're not going to be able, you can't give Peyton Manning the answers as Matt Chatham says, before the snap. You can't. If he knows what you're in, if he knows what coverage you're in, you're gonna get picked apart. So I mean, and I think going back through the history, of the Patriot Colts and now the last year the Patriot Bronco matchups, when they go against Manning, Belichick always seems to have some kind of twist where, even people who, and I just really closely follow the Patriots. I don't really follow the other teams, but, it's like even people like me who are like, wait, Eric Alexander is starting a middle linebacker in the AFC Championship in 2000, or Kyle Arrington's playing defensive end against the Colts in 2010. It's just these random weird wrinkles that, he clearly breaks out more often than not. It's some kind of thing that even people who have watched the team as closely as you and I have, are like, what? So I think you got to be on the lookout for some of that. I think the big question for me and kind of doing the math is if you kind of assume that Talib is outside on Demaryius Thomas, you got Arrington, maybe on the other side with, going against Decker. It's really who do they match up against their tight end Thomas? I think that's a big matchup, and I know a lot of people have been looking at Jamie Wise and Jamie Collins playing, and they think he's still a rookie, and we don't watch practice, we don't know exactly how good he is, but it's a tough call, and I hope all those injured secondary guys play. We're lucky that Talib was back out there. They're going to need all hands on deck. We'll have Steve Gregory out there with one thumb. You'll have Jerron Harmon playing somewhere. So it's a tough call, but ultimately I think they just got to play sound defense, hide what they're doing, and weather the storm. They're going to put up points, and you just have to get off the field when you can. Get off the field on third down, and hope that Brady and company can put up 7.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, I was watching their Sunday game against Kansas City, and Kansas City, who has such a very, very good pass rush. I think everyone agrees that they're one of the better teams at pass rushing, and they tried to rush 4 and drop 7, and for the majority of the night, they didn't lay a hand on Peyton Manning at all. They got 0 sacks. I think they only had 2 quarterback hits or 2 hurries, or there wasn't very much. I thought Denver's offensive line had an outstanding game, and that's something the Patriots might have to look at. Is they might have to bring more than 4 this week.
I think you're right, but I also would say that very favorable situation for Denver. They're at home. We know they've had some protection issues in the past. They were getting kind of hammered that whole week. Huge game for them, divisional game that, they really wanted to make a statement. So, kind of, I don't want to say expected, but not crazy that their offensive line really put together one of their best games against one of the best defenses. But I think you're totally right. I think we also saw, traditionally Belichick, a little bit of a conservative defensive coach, not going to blitz too much, and we saw a lot of blitzing against the Panthers, and they got burned a lot. So I think for me, when I look at it, it really comes down to Chandler Jones, Rob Ninkovich, Chris Jones, those guys winning their one-on-one matchups and not making it necessary for them to have to blitz to get pressure, because, Chandler Jones is beating their fill-in left tackle, which I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but, if Chandler Jones is giving that guy hell, it's really going to, give Patriots a solid foundation from which to, kind of drop more guys in coverage and, not have to send those blitzers. But, look, like I said earlier, we saw it with Kyle Arrington playing defensive end, where they kind of try to match up against the Colts right tackle back in 2010. I think there's going to be some kind of twist, but if you're going to have to send a lot of guys to get pressure, it's, as you know, such a slippery slope. You send too many guys, you're probably going to get pissed apart if you don't get there. So I think ultimately it comes down to just Chandler and Ninkovich winning their matchups, causing chaos, getting to Manning, and that'll be a really good way to kind of kick things off on defense.
Exactly. And my sleeper for this week, and I think if the Patriots are going to have a chance to slow them down, is a guy we wouldn't normally mention as a big name player, and that would be Chris Jones, because I think we always talk about teams try to get Brady off his spot when he's throwing the ball and stepping up into his throws, and Manning's the same way. He's not the most mobile quarterback, and he likes to step into his throws. I think if Jones can bring some pressure up the middle, and he's been able to do that this year, that might be a turning point, and maybe we're grasping at straws here, but that could be a turning point for the Pats.
Yeah, well, we got to find some ray of positivity. I think you nailed it. Anybody who reads my blog, it's like I've been hammering on the interior pass rusher for 3 years now. I remember me and friends when we started our podcast a couple of years ago talking about J.J. Watt and just drooling over what he could do, and that was before we even knew he was going to be Defensive Player of the Year. But, I think a lot of times when fans look at pass rush, they just look at defensive ends and outside linebackers. But I think really what the Patriots have really missed most the last few years is the guy who actually was at practice today was Mike Wright. Just those guys that Myron Pryor type who, didn't play very long for the Patriots, but, just wasn't a nose tackle. I mean, they get so many nose tackles. It's always Kyle Love and Brandon Dedrick. And I mean, I love Will Fork, and I mean, I think that they used him well, but I've been dying for a get up the field type. And so, of course, then here comes Chris Jones, who, ironically, I know we all do our draft research, and it's like, figuring a needle in the haystack, but he was one guy that I actually did have in one of my many mock drafts where it's like, this is the kind of guy that you just need to be able to plug in there. And like I said, I love Will Fork, but it's like, get somebody who's going to push that pocket and just be a force in the middle. And so I think you're totally right. You get Manning off the spot with Jones. We even saw Chandler Jones sliding inside a little early in the season, even if they have to go back to that. But it's whatever they got to do without sending too many guys to get them off the spot. They just have to do it.
Very good. And how do you see the Pats going at this on offense? We talked to Shalise about it, and, we were kind of the opinion that they might try to grind it out, slow down the game. But, I think they, at the same point, you could see them do the hurry up, but, keep it with the run, and then, try to keep Manning off the field that way.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's always, it's always a good formula. And, I posted a video yesterday of Eric Mangini back in, I guess it was 2010, talking about how, he beat Brady when he was with the Browns and, what kind of the philosophy is of trying to beat these guys. And the first thing is limit the time that they're on the field, put together long, sustained drives and limit their possessions. And like we said earlier, Brady had 7 possessions last week against the Panthers. I mean, that's exactly what you want to do. So I think it's the same thing for Peyton Manning. Whatever they can do to keep him off the field, they got to do. But I mean, I think what we're seeing now is the Patriots offense is kind of in this gray area at the moment where you don't know quite what they're like really super elite at. I mean, they're pretty good at a lot of things. Vereen's talented. That Dobson is coming around on the outside. You've got Gronkowski's coming around. You have, Amendola, but it's all kind of an unknown still. And I think that they're going to do whatever they have to do to move the ball. Ultimately, I think the most important thing is just the red zone. When you get in there, they got to get 7. I mean, this is, as the saying goes, and I'm often fond of, you can't bring a knife to a gunfight. And I mean, this is going to be a gunfight this weekend. And, every chance they get, they got to put up 7. I mean, that's just, that ultimately is what it's going to come down to. And, as we've seen plenty of time with Peyton Manning, I mean, it always feels like Patriots jump out to a huge lead. You're feeling great. And then all of a sudden, here comes touchdown Peyton Manning, 3-0 Patriots, touchdown Peyton, So it's like they say, another cliche, is I can throw as many in as I can. And, 60 minutes, fight down to the end, and put up 7 every chance you get. And I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. But I think they can run it. They can do the short passing. They've got these proverbial deep threats now. With Tompkins kind of coming along and Dodson coming along. So I think they can do a lot of different things, and I think that they'll be able to exploit some weaknesses in the Denver defense.
Well, Mike, we want to thank you very much for coming on Patriot Central. We really appreciate it. We hope we can get you back on here again. We'll definitely have to get you and Eric on here one time and get you guys on together. But
I know. He was on Patriots.com today hosting, so he might be too big time for us now. But I don't know.
That's awesome.
So thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. I'd love to do it again.
Okay, Mike. Thanks a lot. And that was Mike Dussault from the Bleacher Report. Yeah, I got a little tongue-tied there. That was Mike Dussault from the Bleacher Report. He also does a great podcast with Eric Friends from Boston.com. And right now we're going to lead into our interview with Shalise Manza Young.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central radio network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
Don't want to be an American idiot. Don't want a nation under the new media.
Let's take a moment and pay respect to the awesome referees in the National Football League and give a great example of how awesome they are.
Unnecessary, after the play was over, unnecessary roughness on number 52. Excuse me a minute.
Okay. Mike, this is like a wanna get away commercial.
There are
like
multiple fouls on the play. Unnecessary roughness on the kicking team, number 92, 52. Unnecessary roughness on the receiving team, number 57. Those fouls offset. There's also a holding, number 92, on the return team. All those fouls offset at the spot of that foul. First down, Dallas.
Okay, maybe that was a bad example.
Lead in to this week, so hey, that's great. We have a very special guest with us tonight on Patriots Central. We have Shalise Manza Young, writes for the Boston Globe. She used to write for the Providence Journal. She's a Patriots beat writer and a well-known expert on things going on down in Foxborough. Shalise, welcome to Patriots Central. You're on with Steve and Jeremy, and we've already met, so we know each other a little bit. But welcome, and thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. I don't know about expert, but I appreciate it.
Well, let's get right into this. Of course, what everyone's been talking about all week was the finish of the Panthers game. The penalties at the end of the game. Not only was the holding on Gronkowski a controversial ending, but there was also another one on Devin McCourty, where, in retrospect, if you're looking at it, it looked like Greg Olsen had an armbar on McCourty. I wanted to ask you, is this just a bad call? Or, we've seen a lot of things going on around the NFL lately with home teams getting some really bad calls. There was this one at the end of this game. The San Francisco, New Orleans game, the Patriots game at the Jets a few weeks ago. Is the NFL taking a hit with their credibility on these kind of calls?
I think they are, and it's not good when the officials are part of the story week after week. I think that call, to me, the call at the end of the Panthers game, the problem was once the flag hit the ground, they should have left it there. Because, you can argue if the flag's never thrown, then as a Patriots fan or just as somebody who's watching the game, you can always, raise the question, could there have been pass interference there? Could there have been holding there? And you can argue that. But without seeing the flag, that flag hitting the ground, I think gave tangible evidence to everybody that there was some sort of infraction. So then to have it picked up, I think is where the major problem lies. But certainly, like I said, I think it's not great for the league. It's not what they want, certainly. And it stinks because in the case of the Patriots and the Panthers, I thought it was a fantastic game. And it stinks that, that's what people have been talking about for the last few days is that last call or non-call instead of talking about, what a great Monday Night Football game it was.
Yeah, and let's talk about the Patriots defense right now. There's depth. Has it reached the tipping point right now? Because there was a while there on Sunday where they were actually missing 6 of their starters from the beginning of the year. And it seemed a little obvious that the Panthers were having their way with them when they had the ball. Is this something they can work through, or is this, a symptom of something we're going to have to get used to watching?
Well, I don't think they have a choice but to work through it, but I do think this could be the tipping point. You went without Vince, you went without Tommy Kelly, you went without Gerard Mayo, and it's been okay. We've seen a rise in the number of rushing yards that the Patriots have given up. Obviously, teams know to try to attack the middle of the field. They did get Sopoaga, and he does help in the middle of the field. But still, one guy comes in and 2 guys went out in Wilfork and Kelly. So now, not only do you have, the changes in the front 7, now the back 4 is hurting. And it couldn't come at a worse possible time right now because even if Aqib Talib plays and even if, Kyle Arrington plays and even if Steve Gregory plays, Arrington to leave in particular, if you're a defensive back, a hip and a groin, which is what they're dealing with, you kind of need those. Backpedaling, change of direction, hips and groins come in really handy when you're talking about those sorts of things. And to have this particular Denver offense come in here and that your cornerbacks are going to be less than 100% clearly, even if they do play, it's not what you're looking for, and I think the Patriots, they might be taking one on the chin this week because it's not the same as last week, that the Panthers offense is good, but it's not the Broncos offense. Devin McCourty was asked about it today, that in the past we've seen the Patriots have success because they try to take away one player or the one thing that an offense does best and try to make them, win in another way. Well, if you take away Demaryius Thomas, well, then he's going to go to Eric Decker and Wes Welker. If you take away Wes Welker, he'll go to Demaryius Thomas. And there's just so many options there, and they've done so well moving the ball that it's tough to see, Logan Ryan and Deron Harmon, they've done good, but it's a lot to ask of these young kids in this situation.
All right, so just to flip the field for a second, Shane Vereen was expected to ease back into the game last week and instead pulled his career-high 8 receptions. So what does his presence being back mean for this team moving forward?
I think it's huge. I think if you look at it, it is a small sample size because he's only played 2 games this year. But in those 2 games, the Patriots are 16 of 30 on third down, so a little bit more than 50%. But in the games that he didn't play, they're hovering right around 31, 32%, I think it was. So, on third down percentage, that's somewhere the Patriots, we've seen them really struggle in the 3 losses that they have. That's a number that you can point at, particularly against the Jets and the Bengals. They could not stay on the field on third down. So I think that's where Vereen makes a huge difference. And plus, I think Gronk has something to do with that as well, because you saw an uptick on third down against the Steelers, which obviously you had Gronk at, arguably his healthiest, or at least he was in the best game shape as he's rounding into form. And now you add Vereen to that. I think it just makes a big difference for them in terms of being able to sustain drives and stay on the field.
Definitely. Just to stay with the running backs for a second, obviously coming into this year, Ridley was coming off of a pretty good year, but one thing that we definitely wanted to see was his ability to hold on to the ball. And I think that it was clear from him missing most of the second half after the fumble that fumbles are going to remain a problem for him, and that problem hasn't gone away. Do you think the Patriots are already in need to find another feature back, or should we still give this more time?
I would give Ridley more time. I did take a quick look at his fumbles and the number of touches he has compared to other running backs in the league, and how many, similarly, how many touches they've gotten and how many fumbles they have. Right. It's not his percentage really isn't that out of whack with other players who are touching the ball as much as he is, or maybe more than that. And I think, as much as we would love to not see the running back put the ball on the ground, BenJarvus Green-Ellis was by far the exception, not the rule. I mean, all running backs are going to put the ball on the ground. You don't want to see it happen in key situations, clearly, like when you're in the red zone against a team that doesn't give up many points. But I also think that when Ridley's on the field and he's being used as the running back, he's far more dynamic and he's far more productive than LeGarrette Blount is. And, Vereen, we've seen Vereen be a good ball carrier, so maybe he gets more of those carries now if he gets his game legs back under him. But I just think Ridley is by far, in terms of ball carrier, I think he's the best ball carrier they have. And it's sort of, you kind of have to weigh one or the other. That, and just, like I said, just sort of hope for the best. You don't want him to fumble in the red zone, but, every running back is going to fumble sometimes. I think Marshawn Lynch has 4 fumbles this year. And obviously he's still a big part of that Seattle offense.
Shalise, back to me again here. I wanted to ask you, how do you see the Patriots trying to attack the Broncos defense on Sunday night? I know with, them hurting on defense, do you see them trying to run the football more and try to slow the game down and control the clock? Or do you see them trying to open it up more?
That's a really good question, to be honest with you, because it does make sense to have them slow the game down, but then you have to wonder too. Now that in particular they have familiar faces back, Vereen and Gronkowski, guys that Brady is familiar with, guys that have run the no huddle with him before. Do they try to pick up the tempo even a little bit more because they want to keep Denver on their heels. They don't want them to be able to switch players in and out and keep guys fresh and things like that. So I'm actually not sure, how they might do it, because I totally see your point that try to grind things out and give the defense as much time as possible. And obviously a good way to play defense against Peyton Manning is to not put the ball in his hands. But then, the Denver defense, it's a pretty solid, particularly that front seven is very solid. So do you try to go up tempo so they can't switch guys in and out and maybe wear them down that way? So it's, that's one of the things I think certainly to keep an eye on how the Patriots do it.
Absolutely. And, that was what the blueprint they used on them last year. Granted, they've made some changes in their defense, but it worked pretty well last year. And they ran an incredible amount of plays when Denver was here in Foxborough. I think it was week 5 last year. I was just curious how you saw them possibly, trying to work this out. On defense, I think, they're going to have their work cut out for them. Like we said, their wide receivers are really, really strong. And, they have a couple of guys that are hurting right now. Have you heard any more on the availability for Julius Thomas or Wes Welker?
Welker looks like he'll be out there. He was at practice today. The Broncos reported that he was limited in practice, but, he was at practice, and he did talk to media, and I think under concussion protocol, guys don't have to talk to the media until they've been cleared. So if that is the case and he's been cleared, of course we all expect that he's going to be out there. As long as they say that he's going to be out there. So yeah. Welker's going to be out there. That goes back to the Arrington situation. It's tough to cover Wes Welker even when you're fully healthy. And then Kyle Arrington, with the groin injury, he's obviously not going to be 100%. We'll probably see more Marquise Cole out there if Arrington's really, hurting or struggling to cover Welker. In terms of Julius Thomas, he was limited today also. So I think that bears watching. That I'm not sure if that might come down to be a game time decision for them or how he's feeling. I know it's a knee injury, and their other tight end, Joel Dreesen, is also limited in practice this week too. So maybe you get a bit of a break there. But you still have Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker and Wes Welker and a pretty solid running game to contend with as well.
Yeah, and I heard Devin McCourty made a quote this afternoon that Peyton Manning knows the Patriots defense as well as they do. So I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think it should be a great game to watch. I don't think there'll be a shortage of points scored on Sunday night.
Well, and that's the thing is I think the Patriots they're going to have to get on the board. This isn't going to be one of those games that they can win. I don't even know if they could win like 30-23 like they did against the Falcons earlier this year. This might be one of those games where they have to get well into the 30s, close to 40 points to be able to hang tough with the Broncos because, the defense is hurting right now. There's really no other way to put it, but the Patriots defense is hurting and the Broncos, they're just good. You look at the numbers and flipping through the NFL stats the last couple of days and Peyton's third in the league on third down conversion as a quarterback. He's second in the league quarterback rating in the fourth quarter. I did notice that they're slipping a little the last couple of games on third down. So maybe the Patriots are taking a look at what those teams have done against against the Broncos to slow them down on third down. And certainly that would, really help the Patriots if they could get off the field defensively on third down, something we didn't see them do last week. But yeah, it's a tall challenge. And like I said, to have the secondary banged up, it couldn't come at a worse possible time.
Well, Shalise, we wanted to thank you very much for coming on Patriot Central tonight. And we hope to get you back on here, sometime in the near future. And congratulations, by the way. I know when I spoke with you to training camp this summer, you have a new addition of the family on the way.
Yes,
So,
I do.
And
Yep.
from all of us here at Pro Football Central, congratulations to your family.
I
And thank you very
appreciate
much.
that. Thank you. You guys know where to find me. I appreciate it. And if I don't talk to you, happy Thanksgiving also.
Hey, this is Jamie Nicole, football girl.
This is Kevin Storm and Norman.
Please check us out every Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, for the home of the number one NFC team in the league, Seahawks Central Radio.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Do you have the time to listen to me whine about nothing and everything all at once? I am one of those melodramatic fools, neurotic to the bone, no doubt about it. Sometimes I give myself the creeps. Sometimes my mind plays tricks on.
And welcome back to Patriots Central. That was a little musical interlude there for you. Hey, right now, Jeremy and I are going to break down the Patriots and Panthers and the Broncos game. Yeah, we're still stuck on the Panthers from Monday night. Let's talk about who has the advantage here, Jeremy. Let me get your thoughts on the Patriots running game versus the Denver front seven.
Whew. That's tough. They've actually, the Denver defense has not been great this year, no question, but they have had one of the better run defenses in the league, and I think that Shane Vereen's going to be a big factor for us this week. I'm not sold on us, pounding it in, but I think that the running backs in the receiving game is going to be more important this week.
Yeah, this week when you're looking at the running game, I watched a bunch of Denver's games this year because they're on a lot because they're so good this year. But the one thing I noticed against Kansas City, when people try to run to the outside on them, they have so much speed at the linebacker position that they're able to chase it down and snuff it out really, really well. I think if you can run on this team, and you can, it has to be right at them. You have to run between the tackles, and it has to be these quick hitting runs. You have to get to that second level because their linebackers are small. They're not really big guys. They're all about 230, 235. They're not those big thumpers. They're athletic, fast guys that flow to the ball. And if you get to that second level, you can get some yardage on them. But it's not going to be easy, but I do think they're going to be able to run the football against them. So with that being said, let's go over to the Patriots passing game versus the Denver secondary. Who do you think has the advantage on that?
Yeah, I'm actually going to give that advantage to us. I am going to say that wait, you said Patriots receivers, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to give it to us just because of the progression that I've seen over the last few weeks. I think that a huge plus to come away with from last week's game against the Panthers, which obviously had a disappointing finish, but we got to look at the positives from that game. And I think that the way that Brady was throwing the ball was definitely one of them. I mean, I wish that we would have gotten in the end zone a bit more, obviously, but I think that he did his part, and I expect to see good things. And the Denver secondary, I think we could beat them up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can pass on this Denver team. And again, I go back to earlier in the season, and I look at the blueprint the Dallas Cowboys did against them, and they used their tight end, Jason Witten, in a manner I think the Patriots will. They're going to try to bust the seams, and when they do that, you're going to get some single coverage on the outside, and you have to make them pay. And Rob Gronkowski is a guy that can definitely do that. I think, he's going to give their safeties all they can handle, down the seam in this game. And it should open things up on the outside and across the middle. And I think, you look at how the Patriots have progressed the offense the last two games. I think things are definitely looking up with this offense. One of the things we mentioned with Mike Dussault in our interview with him, they had 7 possessions in the game against Carolina. The smallest number of plays they ran in any possession was 8, and that was a drive they scored a touchdown on, and that was the number 1 statistic defense in the NFL. So I do think they can move the ball on just about anybody. It all comes down to production. They have to have a good game plan. I think they can move the ball, and I think they can score on this team. Now comes the flip side. The Broncos' running game against the Patriots' front seven. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, I mean, I think that that's going to be our strong point. I think that we're going to do a good job stopping the run this week. I don't really see us having too much of a problem. I really like the way that Chandler Jones and Ninkovich have been playing. I think that they're going to be able to get to running backs early. So I'm not too worried about that. Plus, honestly, I don't have as much faith in Noshawn Marino, despite how well he's been playing this season. I'm not falling for it.
Yeah. I do think the Patriots are going to do a better job this week of stopping the run. And Denver, as good as their offense has been this season, their running game hasn't been that consistent. They're only averaging 3.6 yards a carry.
Right.
And, one of the things we saw, again, I'm going back to Sunday night against Kansas City. Kansas City was trying to stem the tide in the passing game. They were playing a lot of nickel and dime coverages. And Peyton Manning, had a gimpy ankle. And one of the things the Broncos tried to do was, they tried to go deep in the shotgun, run the ball against those lighter sub packages. And they ran the ball for a season high 36 times, but they didn't do it very well. They only averaged 2.9 yards a carry. And I think you're going to see the Patriots in a lot of similar looks. And I do think, I'm not sure they'll hold them to that kind of average, but
Right.
I do think they're going to have a good game trying to stem the running game of the Broncos. And now we come to the elephant in the room, and that's the Denver passing game against the Patriots secondary. How do you see this one playing out?
All right, so I'm not going to kill the Patriots here because, I mean, quite frankly, we haven't done that bad defending the pass this year. So, I'm not going to kill us. We are going to have the same problem that every team has, and that is we just don't have enough defensive backs to cover how many good receivers are on the Broncos. Sure, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot on that one by letting Wes Welker go there, but that's a argument for another time. I think we're going to have to keep up. That's the thing. They're going to get their points. It's going to happen. We're going to let up some plays because everybody does. But, if we can contain them, get Manning off his footing a little bit, I want to see pressure. I want to see a lot of pressure on Manning. I think that that's key. Like you guys brought up earlier in the show, the way that the Chiefs played against the Broncos just shocked me because they've been such a good pass rush team, and they didn't rush Manning. Of all people, he's not somebody you want to be comfortable in a pocket. So, I think that if we disrupt him, we could get some turnovers. And, I love Manning and everything. Like, he's a great quarterback, but in pressure situations, he gets some happy feet and can make bad decisions.
Absolutely. And I do think the Broncos have a decided advantage, here.
Right.
Because I think even if the Patriots are healthy on defense, the Broncos would still have the advantage here because they have so many talented guys.
Too much.
And they can throw the football on anybody. I think Peyton has proved that. They're going to have the advantage in the passing game no matter who they play. The one caveat to that, I think that you can hang your hat on is if you can bring pressure. And I think the pressure, obviously you want your edge rushers to have a good game. But like we were mentioning with Mike, I think where it has to come is right up the middle in this game. And this is where, these young guys, Joe Villano, Chris Jones, who have done a good job of creating pressure, have to get Manning off his spot. And I think that's the only way. You're not going to stop this team. I don't see that happening at all. I think you can slow them down. And the one thing to remember is it's going to be very cold and blustery in Foxborough on Sunday night. And one thing we noticed last year was after his neck surgery that Peyton Manning didn't do well in the cold weather. His arm strength was way down in that playoff game against the Ravens. So that might be something to monitor. But I do think the Broncos are going to have a really solid passing game. And then, I think we might see a lot more Jamie Collins in this one.
Definitely. And as you said, going back into the to rushing the inside. I constantly tell people that, people worry a little bit too much about the defensive ends. Like getting a sack is great, but disrupting a passer in the middle, that's what causes interceptions, which I would much rather have.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's it. And that's when people talk about getting quarterbacks off their spot. That's what Brady and Manning are the best at. They have their spot where they step into the throws, and a lot of times these edge rushers will bring pressure from the outside, and they step up into their throws and they get them away. But if you can disrupt them up the middle, that's where interceptions come, because balls tend to sail. A guy thrown off his back foot. That's how turnovers happen. But we'll have to see how it all plays out. So let me get your prediction for this week, Jeremy. How do you see this one playing out?
I think that this is going to be a close one. I know that I predicted a Patriots loss last week, and I'm sorry, guys, but I think we're going to turn it around this week. I think that we're going to beat the Broncos. Because honestly, I see it being a shootout, and I'll take Brady over Manning in a shootout. That's honestly how I see it.
That's excellent.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a high one here. I'm gonna go 36-34 Patriots.
Well, I was talking with Russ Goldman off the air yesterday about this, and we both agreed if it comes down to a final possession, I would much rather have the Patriots down by 2 or 3 points and Brady having the ball than being up by 2 or 3 and having Peyton Manning have the ball. But
either one of those. Yeah. Go
ahead. Last week I had the Patriots winning in Carolina. They came really close to that, but this week I do have them losing. I think they're going to score a lot of points, but I don't think they're going to be able to slow Manning down enough. I think this one's going to be a shootout. Like you said, I have a 38-31 Broncos, but I much rather see your prediction come true. But I am going to say, once again, if it comes down to a final possession, I would rather see the Patriots down by 3 with Brady having the ball at the end of the game than having Peyton Manning with his hand on the ball and the Patriots up by 3. So
right, honestly, and that's an exciting part about this game. It could come down to a last possession.
Yeah.
And hopefully it doesn't end like last week's last possession.
Yeah. Yeah, really. But what do you say we wrap this thing up for this week? We want to thank everyone for listening this week. You can download our shows on iTunes. You can listen to us on the Stitcher Radio app. We want everyone to check out all the articles on Pro Football Central. And we want to thank everyone for listening to Patriots Central. Go Pats!
You have been listening to an exclusive podcast on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. For news, blogs, and other awesome podcasts, please check out ProFootballCentral.com and follow us on Twitter at PF Central.